The paper starts with sort of a revisit to a field site, which is the Shanghai University of Traditional Chinese Medicine, one of the places where I did ethnographic research on the world in Chinese medicine. So in 2004, Dr. Chen Kaixian, a chemist renowned for his research in molecular pharmacology, was appointed the new president of the Shanghai University of Traditional Chinese Medicine. While acknowledging to being, quote, 100% ignorant of Chinese medicine, end quote, Dr. Chen presented himself as a firm believer in the scientific nature and therapeutic value of this experiential medicine. He outlined a history of progress in which medicine evolves through 3 stages: experiential medicine, such as Chinese medicine or TCM, experimental medicine, exemplified by biomedicine, and comprehensive medicine that would integrate both. He asserted, quote, the convergence of Eastern and Western medicines is the future direction of medicine, end quote. His goal was to steer the college, as well as Chinese medicine, onto a path of commercial production, education, and research all wrapped into one. So the news of his appointment was greeted with a lot of dismay, as you can imagine, among the local communities of traditional Chinese medicine practitioners and educators. However, it was not greeted with as much shock as we might have expected. In fact, the Shanghai University of Chinese Medicine, Traditional Chinese Medicine, was founded in 1956, and it was always known for practicing something called the two-fisted medicine of biomedicine and traditional Chinese medicine. It was both notorious and famous for it. So the point I'm trying to make here is that Chinese medicine is not a pure alternative to biomedicine, nor does it pose as the epistemological other to the modern with a capital M. Yet, as I write in this essay, from within the modernist regime of knowledge and mode of knowing, Chinese medicine's commitments to its own worldliness have engendered reimaginations of the oneness of the human in the world, thinking and being. In other words, possibilities for undivided and multiplicitous ways of thinking, doing, and being. So the paper really explores how, from within the modern, and while deeply entangled in modernist practices of bifurcation, metaphorical and analytic thinkings in TCM play pivotal roles in everyday pedagogical and clinical discourse and practice, especially concerning the body, illness, and environments of various natures and scales. Rather than relying on deductive or inductive thinking, metaphors and analogies are central to the quotidian pedagogy and practice of Chinese medicine. These analytics work sideways and in-specific, requiring and encouraging practitioners to think relationally and creatively while confronted with clinical situations, all the while insisting on the dynamic, multiplicitous, and even disharmonious oneness of the human in the world. Now, I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way, but this essay is not about uplifting, but in fact, against uplifting, whether in terms of hierarchical articulations of knowledge and life, or masculine narratives of and aspirations for transcendence in thinking and being. To this end, I argue for transdisciplinary engagements with STS, feminist anthropology, and Chinese medicine, which I hope would allow us to unsettle the gender relations between the empirical and conceptual, material and force, the analytical and the analyzed, the human and the world. I think of transdisciplinarity as a way to revise and reevaluate concepts and methods, transgress and alter disciplinary boundaries, and just as importantly, hierarchies. It pushes STS and feminist scholars to look at phenomena that are too often consigned to the other side of the modern constitution and habitually taken as objects of inquiry rather than analyses in their own right. The goal of these transdisciplinary engagements goes well beyond the reversal of asymmetrical binary categories and relations. The aim here, rather, is to force a rupture from within the modern its forms of knowledge and life, and in due process engender a possibly non-modern feminist analytic, an alternative mode of thinking, doing, being that might partially undo the effects of modernity. So let me first turn to the predicaments of the experiential. Now, the quest for convergence and common ground with experimental science and medicine is essential for the present and future of TCM. Yet, on what and whose terms this convergence should take place is a subject of vexation. Designated in experiential medicine, TCM is seen as entrenched in the empirical, the particular, and the contingent. As such, it is not only in need of conceptual uplifting by scientific experimentation and theorization, but its integration with biomedicine also entails translational practices that at once activate and undermine scientized forms of TCM, which is basically all you have, all that you have. The predicaments of TCM are thus the predicaments of the experiential, which are thoroughly modern. As I've argued elsewhere, what we've come to know as traditional Chinese medicine, all in quotes, is constituted through rather than prior to translocal encounters and entanglements, or what I call the worlding of TCM, that conjure with modernity, science, and biomedicine. These encounters and entanglements conjure particular visions, understandings, and practices of what makes up the world and our places in it. In due process, worlding renders particular forms of TCM imaginable, thinkable, and doable, while at the same time obscuring and excluding others. Historians and anthropologists have argued, for instance, that the emergence of TCM as a professional medicine in the 1950s in China was a process of exclusion, scientization, and hybridization. To begin, unscientific and superstitious elements, such as itinerary doctors, divination, bone setting, and so forth, were excluded from the official version of TCM that now mainly consists of herbal medicine, acupuncture, and canine. I'm sure a lot of you here are familiar with some form of TCM. Centered to the professionalization of TCM is something called experience. If you read, the textbooks that came out in the 1950s, all of them began with quotes from Chairman Mao. All genuine knowledge originates in direct experience. Okay, so in keeping with the kind of that Mao's model, all these textbooks will argue that Chinese medicine is the result of thousands of years of struggle between the working Chinese people and environments or worlds of both human and non-human kinds. So as you can imagine, right, so the relation between the human and the world, which would be conceptualized as a kind of a unified process, right? Not a unified structure, but a unified process, was reread in terms of class struggle, right? The relation between the human and the world became between a kind of class struggle. Furthermore, under the instruction from the Chinese Ministry of Health, biomedical professionals work with TCM practitioners in creating TCM institutions, compiling TCM theories, and conducting laboratory and clinical research. TCM thus solidified status as a uniquely Chinese empirical and experiential medicine that, caught up within the relenting machine of progress, awaits refinement by science. Although normative discourses TCM readily frame it as a culturally distinctive experiential medicine with a continuous history grounded in empirical practice, I suggest here instead that the professional and intellectual identity of TCM is conditioned by the bifurcation of theory and empiricism, material and force, human and the world. Even so, knowledge formation in TCM holds on to a commitment, however tenuously, to analytics that work with and within the specific, and to quote Agamben, that moves from particular to particular, especially metaphors and analogies that insist on and make explicit the inseparability and multiplicity of thinking, doing, and being. And just to insert a note about bifurcation here, because I don't have the time to get into it, I here really draw Marilyn Strathern's argument about bifurcation, which is not just about the creation of binaries, but a moment a moment at which analyses go down different routes and go further and further apart, never ever to meet again. So the word the kind of being uprooted from its worldly environments. Okay, so to talk about the effects of bifurcation, but at the same time the kind of commitment to worldliness, I will turn to two examples. First, the discourse of kidney-Yang syndrome, and two, the specificity of clinical practice in traditional Chinese medicine today. So as I mentioned, in the 1950s, a lot of the biomedical professionals were ordered basically by the state to first study with traditional healers, and then based on that, either participate in founding these institutions of Chinese medicine, or conduct clinical and laboratory research. So Dr. Shen Ziying is probably one of the most successful examples for his research on Shen Benzhi, or what he translates as the material essence of kidney. After his apprenticeship in the 1950s with a Chinese healer, Dr. Shen Ziying embarked on a lifetime project in laboratory and clinical experiments in search of scientific explanations for basic Chinese medical concepts, because these are just experiential medical practices in need of uplifting to the level of theory through experimentation. So what he did was something called a study of Shenyang Xuzhen, commonly translated as the syndrome of kidney-yang deficiency, so the yin-yang. I hate to call it dialectic, but it's really this kind of a process of animation and transformation. So among the visceral functional systems in the Chinese medical body, Shen is considered to be the foundation of inborn constitutions. In dealing with kidney-yang deficiency, or simply KYD, Dr. Shen Ziying purposefully went for the most basic of basics. Among TCM communities, however, his project was highly controversial and is debated to this day. On the one hand, the Chinese word Shen was used around the turn of the 20th century to translate the anatomical kidney into biomedicine, in biomedicine, and kidney was in turn used to translate Shen into English. In everyday discourse, lay discourse, Shen is often conflated with the anatomical kidney, and this conflation is used by opponents as well as young TCM students as evidence that Chinese medicine is vague, unscientific, and or downright ignorant about Chinese anatomy. So let's see. Okay, I'm gonna say this. This is a quick and dirty summary, as those know me, of the whole kidney-yang debate, right? So here you have kind of a conflation of the Chinese concept Shen with the biomedical, the anatomical notion of kidney, right? When in fact, if you really look at the practice, right, of Chinese medicine, Shen is both, it's at once visceral, functional, and metaphorical, right? It's irreducible to some kind of materiality, and it's irreducible to some kind of metaphor, right? There's kind of that kind of undivided notion of the concept of Shen. So through this kind of KYD, Dr. Shen Ziying's experimentation, he argued that you people who criticize Chinese medicine are wrong, right? For being scientific, unscientific, you're wrong, because I found the new material basis for the syndrome, which is, you know what, not located in kidneys, but in the hypothalamus. Okay? So it's not that Chinese medicine was wrong, it's just that you found the wrong material. Right? So it's a way of justifying, scientizing, theorizing Chinese medicine, but at the expense, right, of the undividedness that is so central to the everyday practice and pedagogy of Chinese medicine. And in so doing, it also creates more accusations of vagueness, right, about Chinese medicine. So let me just skip to what everyday practice of Chinese medicine might look like, right? What are the kind of worldly commitments that I was talking about might look like in the everyday practice of Chinese medicine. Okay, So here's a quote from Dr. Wu Hongzhou, an herbalist and curator of the Museum of the History of Chinese Medicine in Shanghai. And he argued, yes, there is a robust empirical tradition within Chinese medicine. It is hard to be a good doctor, whether in traditional Chinese or Western medicine. But people think that because 10 different Chinese doctors can come up with 10 different prescriptions for the same patient, it does happen. Traditional Chinese medicine must be based in individual experiences. That's not true. We believe all roads lead to Rome, and these people are all very well read and very well versed. But if you look at it, Western medicine is inseparable from individual experiences as well. Why don't people call surgery an experiential medicine? When we look for someone to do surgery on us, don't we look for a surgeon with a lot of experience? The criteria for judging Chinese medicine and Western medicine should be the same. Right now, they're entirely illogical. Again, sort of turning the argument about logic on its head. So Dr. Hu is acutely aware of the hierarchy of theory and empiricism, as well as the contested nature of the theoretical and the empirical, the conceptual and the experiential, which has localized and marginalized DCM in the translocal space and scale of medical knowledge production and professionalization. Embedded in his narrative, too, is a commitment to the empirical as conceptual, at the center of which the multiplicity and contingency of knowing and being. Even though he quotes the popular English saying all roads lead to Rome, for him there are many possible Romes in the world. The fact that 10 different Chinese doctors can come up with as many prescriptions is not a matter of different perspectives on the same phenomenon, but the result of the ways in which particular clinical observation and analysis on the one hand and a specific illness, person, and syndrome on the other only take on concrete shapes through intra-action. That's to use a phrase from Canberra. So I'm not going to have the time to really go into it. No. So, I'm a good girl. Okay, so let me just, let's see. I'll give you another example, right, of this kind of worldliness. Some of the key therapeutic concepts in TCM do not easily succumb to strategies of abstraction, right, or the bifurcation of theory from experience or practice. Take the concept of wind, for example. TCM practitioners today continue to speak of internal winds that lead to strokes and seizures, and external winds as the cause of common cold, flu, facial paralysis, and other kinds of infectious and seasonal diseases. Foam or wind does not exist in the abstract, and as you can imagine, right, the critique of both internal and external winds are pointed at a very disharmonious world. And I don't know how many people are familiar with the China case. The current government really promotes this idea of harmony, right? So the harmonious state. But by talking about this kind of disharmonious oneness, Chinese medicine also offers a kind of social critique. It does not exist in the abstract. In his account of the wind, which since the Han Dynasty has emerged as, quote, chief of all diseases, the historian Shigehisa Kuriyama argues that irregularity and change are the norm, whereas harmony remains an aspiration for bodily practices and therapeutic interventions in TCM. The development of the concept of wind in the Han Dynasty takes place together with the formulation of the body in Chinese medicine, during which classics such as the Yellow Emperor's Internal Canon are compiled. Kuriyama suggests that rather than a description of the natural, the Han Dynasty wind exists only in the specific, whether cosmic, local, or personal, and is reimagined as the guardian of spatial temporal order. In Chinese medicine, wind is not a natural phenomenon, but is itself alteration and force of change. Instead of belonging to the realm of the natural, the cosmic, or the abstract, wind embodies the ever-shifting relations of the human and the world. Individuals are not immaterial minds set against material bodies. Rather, individuation simply mirrors the plurality and unpredictability of winds, as the imagination of wind sprang from a concrete experience of oriented space and local place, a directly felt sense of seasonal drift and seasonal mood and personal moods. In his words, the character of all winds, inner or outer, is that, quote, they always retain some chaotic contingency, the possibility for suddenly blowing in new and unexpected directions. The imaginary of therapeutic and ontological concepts, such as the wind band, is metaphorical, analogical, and material. Just as wind is never abstract, neither is its analysis. Such metaphorical and analogical thinking and imagination, incidentally, represent some of the most recent efforts in getting beyond strategies of fabrication and expanding the conceptual methodological repertoire of not just Chinese medicine, but STS as well as feminist anthropology. Now, in signature of all things, Jorio Agamben revisits Thomas Kuhn's groundbreaking work on paradigmatic shifts in the production of modern science by turning Kuhn's structural analysis of paradigm into one that centers around process and discursivity. Agamben argues that a paradigm is a form of knowledge that is neither inductive nor deductive, but analogical. It moves from singularity to singularity. For him, 3 more sentences. While induction proceeds from the particular to the universal and deduction from the universal to the particular, the paradigm is defined by a third and paradoxical type of movement, which goes from the particular to the particular. Foregrounding the implication of Michel Foucault's work that the actual knowledge is only a moment of the norm process of making knowledge. Agamben makes the argument that even though both he and Foucault write about actual historical phenomena, these phenomena are not just empirical materials, the significance of which is limited and contained within the materials themselves. To the contrary, these particular phenomena are theory. Okay, and that's something I think I'm out of time that I'm trying to push, right, with the account of Chinese medicine and this kind of sideways association of Chinese medicine, science studies, and feminist anthropology. So the idea is really to think about not to reverse the analyzed and analyzable, but think about a kind of analysis that's always going to be immanent and committed to a refigured, undivided sense